Elizabeth Leiston stood in the grand ballroom of Haldoria's royal palace as Crown Prince Fried suddenly declared that he could no longer tolerate her crimes. Confused, Elizabeth asked what he was talking about. Standing beside the prince was Sylvia Lockett, the adopted daughter of a baron who was pretending to cry while secretly smiling. Fried announced that Sylvia was the woman he truly loved. He accused Elizabeth of pushing Sylvia down the stairs out of jealousy. He declared that even being the daughter of the kingdom's chancellor would not protect her. In front of the nobles and foreign guests, he broke off their engagement and ordered her to be locked inside the dungeon. Elizabeth had been engaged to Fried ever since she was a child. As the daughter of Duke C. Leiston, the kingdom's chancellor, she had spent her entire life preparing to become queen. She studied politics, practiced swordsmanship, and worked tirelessly for the kingdom. After moving into the palace, she personally handled many of the government's administrative duties. One evening, her maid Miri reminded her not to stay awake too late because it was bad for her health. Elizabeth smiled and replied that she still had to finish reviewing several important documents. These tasks normally belonged to Prince Fried, but he was too busy attending business meetings that often turned into social gatherings instead. Because of that, most of his responsibilities were left to Elizabeth. She never complained. In fact, she believed it was easier to work without Fried getting in the way. Elizabeth also managed Funnel Corporation, one of the kingdom's largest businesses. Rather than keeping its profits for herself, she used the money to help poor families and improve the lives of ordinary citizens. Many people praised the mysterious woman behind the company without realizing it was Elizabeth herself, since almost no one had ever seen her portrait. Hearing the citizens thank her made Elizabeth feel embarrassed. She simply wanted to continue working hard so the kingdom could become richer and its people happier. One day, Fried visited her office. He praised her for working so hard before revealing the real reason for his visit. A company called Gacko Corporation wanted permission to work directly with the royal family. Elizabeth refused. She explained that Gacko Corporation had been making unfair profits and mistreating customers. Until they corrected their business practices, she will issue a warning and would not allow them to gain royal approval. Fried immediately became angry. He argued that issuing a warning would damage his reputation. Elizabeth calmly answered that the kingdom's reputation was more important than helping dishonest merchants. The prince ordered her to obey him because she was his fiancée. Elizabeth politely reminded him that protecting the royal family's reputation came first. Furious, Fried stormed out of the room. After he left, Elizabeth asked one of the palace staff, Robert, to quietly watch over the prince so he would not be influenced by irresponsible people. Robert suggested that perhaps Fried was simply tired and needed kinder words instead of criticism. Elizabeth admitted she would think about it, but she believed even small mistakes could eventually lead to the downfall of an entire kingdom. Not long afterward, her father arrived with important news. King Bullet and the Duke would be leaving early for an emergency meeting concerning dangerous monsters appearing near the borders. Unfortunately, the trip would overlap with Haldoria's anniversary celebration. Although Elizabeth's father knew she had been looking forward to taking a break, he asked her to organize the celebration anyway because many foreign guests had already been invited. Elizabeth accepted without complaint, even though it meant giving up her holiday. Later, while looking outside the palace window, she saw Fried happily spending time with Sylvia. Sylvia's casual behavior was unusual for someone around royalty, but Fried seemed completely fascinated by her. Miri criticized Sylvia for acting so improperly inside the palace. Hearing that, Elizabeth only thought that she would need to teach Sylvia proper royal etiquette. Miri could not understand why Elizabeth was helping the very woman who was stealing her fiancé. Elizabeth simply answered that it was not unusual for a prince to have multiple wives in the future. Later, Elizabeth privately spoke with Sylvia. She gently explained that careless behavior around the prince could damage both his reputation and the kingdom's image. She also noticed Sylvia had injured her leg after spending time with another nobleman. Elizabeth assured her she would not tell Fried about it and only asked her to avoid getting too close to other men while remaining near the prince. Sylvia timidly thanked her and promised to be more careful. The moment she left, Sylvia clicked her tongue in annoyance. Soon afterward, Fried approached Sylvia and invited her for a walk. Instead, Sylvia suddenly burst into tears, pushed herself backward, and fell onto the ground. When Fried rushed over to help her, Sylvia blamed herself while making it seem as though Elizabeth had attacked her. Fried immediately believed her. That accusation led directly to the royal ball where Fried publicly ended his engagement with Elizabeth and ordered her imprisonment. Elizabeth tried to explain that she had done nothing wrong and begged him not to cause such a scandal in front of important foreign guests. Before she could say more, Robert restrained her. He declared that Elizabeth had repeatedly hurt the prince. Fried added that Sylvia had even defended Elizabeth and blamed herself despite being the victim. All the while, Sylvia secretly smiled. Elizabeth immediately realized she had been framed. Several foreign guests looked around in confusion. unable to understand what was happening. As Elizabeth was dragged away, Fried proudly announced his new engagement to Sylvia. Far away, King Bullet, Fried's father, was shocked when he learned what had happened. He wanted to return immediately and deal with his foolish son himself. Elizabeth's father stopped him. He believed Elizabeth was more than capable of handling the situation on her own. The king reluctantly agreed. A month passed. Even while imprisoned, Elizabeth continued doing nearly all of the kingdom's important paperwork from inside her cell because Fried still relied on her to keep the government running. Elizabeth could hardly believe how irresponsible he had become. Once the guards were distracted, she secretly used hypnosis magic to make one of them forget everything he saw. Miri then removed her invisibility spell and appeared inside the prison. She brought troubling news. Elizabeth's father had no intention of rescuing her. Instead, he wanted her to solve the problem herself. There was even worse news. Not only that, but Fried had declared Funnel Corporation a traitorous company and placed it under investigation. Furthermore, he planned to remove its current executives and replace them with merchants and nobles loyal to him. Elizabeth immediately realized that the people would suffer if that happened. Miri asked why she continued sacrificing everything for a kingdom that treated her so poorly. In response, Elizabeth answered that it was simply a noble's duty to protect the country and its citizens. However, Miri reminded her that when her own family had fallen into ruin, Elizabeth had been the one who saved her from becoming homeless or being sold into slavery. Because of that, she hated watching the kingdom treat Elizabeth like a disposable tool. Then, Miri revealed another problem. The palace had begun spreading terrible rumors. People now believed Elizabeth had tried to murder Sylvia. Meanwhile, others claimed she secretly controlled politics from behind the scenes and planned to seize the throne for herself. Although none of it was true, more citizens believed the lies every day. As a result, some even called Elizabeth a monster who would destroy the kingdom. Miri was furious. Elizabeth had worked harder than anyone for Haldoria, yet the people abandoned her after hearing only a few false stories. The king depended on her, her father depended on her, Fried depended on her. Even so, none of them protected her. After listening quietly, Elizabeth finally understood. At last, she admitted Miri was right. She slammed her fist into the prison wall, leaving a huge crater. Afterwards, she thanked Miri for opening her eyes. Elizabeth decided she would abandon Haldoria forever. In 5 days, they would leave the kingdom. Before then, however, she wanted to meet one important person. She also instructed Funnel Corporation to temporarily accept the new leadership while secretly sending its loyal members out of the kingdom. At the same time, a small group would remain behind to gather information. Miri happily left to prepare everything. Meanwhile, Elizabeth repaired the damaged prison wall with magic. Everyone in the world possessed mana, but only a few could create powerful divine artifacts through years of training. Elizabeth's divine artifact was the Grimoire of Beelzebub, one of the legendary 7 grimoires. Its special ability allowed her to record other people's magic and use spells that normally belong to different elements. So, although her natural element was water, she easily used earth magic to repair the wall and dark magic to control the prison guard. 5 days later, Elizabeth created an ice clone of herself to remain inside the cell while she escaped with Miri under an invisibility spell. As they walked through the city, she overheard the same people who had once praised her. Now, they called her a greedy woman who had only pretended to help them. Meanwhile, others accused her of trying to steal the kingdom. Quietly, Elizabeth removed the engagement ring from her finger. With that single action, she completely cut all emotional ties with Haldoria. Elsewhere, one of the foreign guests who had witnessed the engagement cancellation reflected on everything that had happened. He had already heard rumors that Prince Fried was incompetent. However, after watching the incident himself, he believed Elizabeth had behaved with remarkable dignity despite the humiliation. He also knew her achievements. After all, even as a 10-year-old child, Elizabeth had dealt serious damage to his empire during a previous war. Because of that, he found it unbelievable that Fried had willingly thrown away someone so valuable. While he was lost in thought, King Bullet entered his room. The man politely bowed before suddenly changing into Elizabeth. The king had actually been Elizabeth in disguise all along. She revealed herself to Count Lucas Lick and made a single request. She wished to seek asylum in the Udyr Empire. Elizabeth admitted she had finally given up on Haldoria. After dedicating her entire life to its people, she had been betrayed by the prince, abandoned by the king, and left alone by her own father. She no longer wished to protect the kingdom. Instead, she intended to destroy it. With a cold expression, Elizabeth froze her engagement ring in solid ice before crushing it into tiny pieces. From that moment on, she swore revenge against the kingdom that had thrown her away. That marks the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed it and want to see more, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like.